Good morning.
Green with your name on it.
Good morning.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Well, we got the bills out yesterday and the rules out this morning.
Yeah, special session. All right.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my camera to work. Yeah, let's see if I can make you all seasick. There we go. Well, Madam Chair, I see it's 8:01. I do see that we have the auditor and superintendent in attendance. I believe that gives us a quorum, but we can wait for just a moment if that seems appropriate, to see if anyone else is going to join us.
That sounds great, Mr. Chairman. I think we're waiting for the secretary and the treasurer, and we understood that both were planning to attend, so not sure what's going on, but oh, there's Mr. Secretary.
And there's the good treasurer.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
No.
Well, Madam Director, if you want to, I think we have in evidence the auditor, the superintendent, the treasurer, and it looks like the secretary is nearby and he is on.
Yeah, we
For the
are.
record, I think that gives us a quorum.
Just turn the video off until you're situated.
Yeah, well.
And with that, I guess if you want to begin.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, this is a special state loan and investment board meeting related to the Transportation Enterprise Account Grant and Loan Program. You'll notice on your agenda that we are under miscellaneous matters J1, which is to consider 3 applications for grant funding from the Transportation Enterprise Account Grant and Loan Program. This program was created in 1999. In the legislative session. The idea is to foster transportation investments in projects of benefit to the general public within the state of Wyoming. Historically, project funding under the program has been in the form of grants to public transportation providers for the purchase of vehicles. This is the second and final TEA meeting for the fiscal years 21-22. The board's approved spending authority is $2 million. However, there is a projected $955,000 shortfall in interest revenues, which decreases the available funds the board may grant or loan under the program. Projected available cash is based on 90% of the investment income received from the Transportation Trust account. The Office of State Lands and Investments, we did receive 3 applications totaling $193,198 for TEA grants to be considered today. We forwarded the applications to the Wyoming Department of Transportation for its review and recommendations as required by Chapter 17 of the board's rules and regulations. WYDOT traditionally ranks the projects that participate ranks the TEA applications from entities that actually participate in the WYDOT transit program higher than applications from entities that do not participate in the program. Among these applications, there is only one funding application wherein the applicant participates in the WYDOT program. Our recommendations are made pursuant to the criteria in Chapter 17 of the board's rules. Specifically, we consider historical TEA funding of all the applicants, the projected available funding for future meetings, the age, mileage, condition, and history of major repairs for units to be replaced, ridership trends over 3 years, and as related to ridership and expanded services, whether the requested additional vehicles should be funded at this time or could they be deferred to a later meeting. For purposes of today, staff is recommending full funding for 2 applications totaling $126,500 and no funding for 1 application totaling $66,698. And so if the board is ready, we can launch into 1A, which is consideration of 2 applications recommended for full funding.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Hearing none, let's proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first application recommended for funding is from the Sweetwater County Transit Authority resource. The acronym is STAR. They are a regional transportation authority that provides door-to-door and stop-to-stop services to the general public in Rock Springs and also in Green River. They further provide a shuttle service between Rock Springs and Green River at designated times, and they provide transportation to senior centers in Rock Springs and Green River. They provide transportation also to outlying communities in Sweetwater County with advance notice. STAR is looking to purchase 1 14-person passenger bus with a wheelchair lift to replace a 7-year-old 18-passenger bus, which has approximately 160,000 miles on it. And I believe that bus recently had some major transmission work back in September. Let's see. It is expected that YDOT will provide 10% of the purchase price with federal funds. STAR will provide 10% local match from savings and the sale of the old bus. And STAR is asking the State Loan and Investment Board to grant 80% of the funds in the amount of $64,000. OSLI staff has analyzed STAR's request, and it is our recommendation that the board grant STAR's funding request in the amount of $64,000. And we would
Thank
stand
you.
for questions.
Thank you, Madam Director. Are there questions for the staff? Hearing none. Madam Director, do you know if there's anyone who wants to address the board on this matter?
Let me see. Mary Seppi, I think she's on. I'm not sure if she wants to raise her hand to make any comments.
Mary Seppi, if you are here, please feel free to address the board.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Never sure with Zoom and not seeing yourself and all those things if you're really hearing everyone. And I just wanted to tell the board, thank you. We really appreciate this. We have, during COVID, of course, like everyone, have reduced some funding and are getting cut at our local levels. And so at the same time, we did take our fixed route offline. We've been running more door-to-door, got some new software in place, had a lot of changes due to COVID. We're going to continue to try to keep the staff, which we have lost some people, and continue to run on a small staff. But we are determined to keep running. And our buses, of course, as things go and miles are put on, things do start to go. And so we do try to replace these as they come up and the miles and the maintenance are getting higher. And so we do try to replace 1 a year. It may not be 1 a year if the mileage can stay down a little bit more without our fixed route. We'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support you've always given us and for funding us this year.
Thank you, Ms. Seppi. Are there any questions for Ms. Seppi? I don't hear any. Really appreciate your comments. I would entertain a motion if that was something somebody wanted to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I would move, Mr. Chairman, Director's recommendations for the 80% grant to start transportation system.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Is there a second from the superintendent? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify with an aye or a thumbs up.
Aye.
I have an aye from the treasurer, thumbs up from the secretary, the superintendent, and the auditor. That motion carries, Madam Director. Thank you again, Ms. Seppi.
Thank you all for the chance to address you. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. I will
Okay,
stay on for the rest of the meeting. It's just interesting to hear it anyway.
very good. You too. All right, Madam Director, next matter.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us to JA2 or J1A2, excuse me, which is the Evanston Youth Club Boys and Girls. The Evanston Youth Club is under contract with Uinta County to provide human services and programs for at-risk youth and their families. Transportation is provided daily on a year-round basis for youth to and from programs in Uinta County, which includes Evanston, Bear River, Mountain View, and Lyman. Vehicles are also utilized for community events like Cowboy Days, High Uinta Athletic Association races and events, and Arts Inc. concerts, arts camps, and festivals. The Evanston Youth Club transports riders in rural Wyoming, mainly on dirt roads, often covered in snow and ice. They are looking to purchase a large SUV to accommodate 8 people. The vehicle is estimated to cost around $78,000. Evanston Youth Club is seeking 80% funding or $62,500 from the board. 7% of the funding or $5,500 is estimated to come from the city of Evanston, and 13% or $10,000 is expected to come from the Larson Family Foundation. OSLI has reviewed the application, and director recommends that the board grant Evanston Youth Club's funding request in the amount of $62,500.
Thank you, Madam Director. Are there any questions for the staff from members of the board? Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a refresher on the impact, or maybe there is no impact with regard to participation in the YDOT program. I noticed that YDOT recommends the ones that do participate in their program. What are the advantages and disadvantages to our program, to YDOT, or to applicants with regard to their participation or non-participation?
Mr. Chairman, I would yield the floor to Beth Blackwell. I think she's got that information for the secretary.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, the YDOT program requires, has certain criteria that members within that program must meet. Their drivers must be trained, do drug testing. They have to have certain maintenance done on their vehicles within a certain time frame. It's a benefit, I believe, to the entities that are members of that program, because they receive funding through that program. So really it's, it just puts a little more ownership on the entities that are within the program, and a little more criteria that has to be met for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth and Ms. Blackwell and Madam Director. Any further questions for the staff? Seeing none, I see Ms. Slade West is here for the Evanston Youth Club. Ms. Slade West, if you'd like to address the board, please, please feel free.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us and for your consideration of our grant application. We just want to thank you for your support of our programs and the importance of safe transportation, how critical it is for our program to be successful. This gives youth the opportunity to have access to life-changing programs, and without safe transportation, most of the at-risk youth would not be able to take advantage of our programs. And we have seen, especially during this time through COVID, that it's important that we provide opportunities for our youth to learn and grow and to receive those tools to be successful now and into adulthood. And so the transportation is absolutely critical, especially as mentioned in our rural community. We are transporting our members back and forth daily and through sometimes not the best conditions. And so to be able to have vehicles that are safe to transport them is absolutely important for our program. And we appreciate your consideration and your support.
Thank you, Ms. Slade West. Are there questions for Ms. Slade West from the board? I don't see any. I really appreciate your comments. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yep, absolutely, Superintendent.
I would move the director's recommendation to approve the T grant funding for the Evanston Youth Boys and Girls Club in the amount of $62,500.
Motion's been made by the superintendent. Is there support for that motion? There's a second from the treasurer and from the secretary. Didn't see who was first. In any event, that motion's been moved and seconded. Is all in favor signify with a thumbs up or an eye? There are thumbs up all around the screen, so that means unanimous. Thank you, Madam Director.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Slade West. Yes, Madam Director, next matter.
Sorry. The next matter on the agenda is J1B, which is to consider one application recommended for no funding. It concerns Bighorn Enterprises, Inc. They are seeking one wheelchair accessible vehicle, a 2021 Ford Transit passenger high roof wagon with an AMS Vans Ford Transit rear lift. The vehicle can transport 9 passengers. Bighorn serves a 4-county area in Wyoming, including Bighorn County, Hot Springs Park, and Washakie counties. Wheelchair ridership has increased over the past year. The vehicle requested would be the main transportation vehicle for a group home in Thermopolis. It would be used to transport people with disabilities daily to and from work, medical appointments, recreation activities, in-town and out-of-town personal shopping trips, and to and from their families, which may or may not be located in Wyoming. The estimated cost of the vehicle is $83,710. Bighorn is requesting that the board fund 80% of the costs in the amount of $66,968. The remaining 20% would come from Bighorn's general fund account. OSLI staff has analyzed the application and is not recommending funding for Bighorn's request. The Attorney General's office has determined that Bighorn is not eligible for funding under the TEA program. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield the floor to Mr. Miller with the Attorney General's office to explain the issues with Bighorn's eligibility.
Thank you, Madam Director. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Bighorn is a private entity, they are required to be under a contract for services with WDH under the board's rules in order to qualify for this program. They have not provided a contract that would be required under the relevant statutory section 35(1)(620). For those reasons, it is the opinion of our office that they are not eligible.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Are there questions for either the staff or Attorney General Miller? Madam Superintendent, I recognize you first, and then I see the Secretary second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering if staff could review when or if this entity has received these funds in the past, specifically the T funds.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there a response, Madam Director or Beth?
Mr. Chairman, I would yield to Beth. I do know that they received funding in 2015, but there may have been other occasions. So Beth?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, they also received funding in fiscal or the biennium of 09 and 10, as well as 11 and 12 and 13, 14. So they have received funding in the past. We tried to go back and look to find the contract. We can't find what was submitted at that time.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that in the old board matter, at least for 2015, in the Attorney General's review matrix that they put together, it does state that Bighorn Enterprises was under contract with the Department of Health for services at that time. As Ms. Blackwell said, we have not been able to locate that contract or see what that was. And I believe Mr. Miller has since had conversations with Bighorn about what we're talking about with respect to the required contract with the Department of Health. And in this instance, they have and Pat, you can correct me, it's a certificate for Medicaid or something along those lines?
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, director, and governor. That's all.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Secretary Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that answers most of my questions I would have had for the staff. I would probably have the question for Ms. De Leon Huzar to maybe address what type, if any, arrangement the entity had back in 2015. It sounds like they had a contract with Department of Health. I'd like to know, what happened to that contract? Did it not get renewed? Did their mission change so they weren't eligible? And find out what other connections they might have so that we could consider the grant, because as it stands right now, it sounds like they're not eligible, and they were before. And so I'd just like some answers on that, perhaps to shed some light on that.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. De Leon is our Barb stand-in. She is on staff here at OSLI, so she's our minute keeper. I'm not sure if Bighorn Enterprises has somebody on the line or not that is here to answer questions. Do you recognize any names?
The only one I would think would be the Deshaun Gila.
Is there, it looks like there's a Deshaun Gila, something like that. I'm not sure if that individual is with Bighorn or has any comment. That's the only other party on the list, I think.
My apologies for that. Yeah, the only person I see other than the names I recognize. So my apologies to the staff for putting you on the spot like that.
Thank you, Madam Director, Mr. Secretary. And I'm looking at the attendee list and I see Disha Gila. Is that the name you were speaking about, Madam Director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure who that individual is or whether they're with Bighorn, but they're the only one, I think, that hasn't spoken yet. And I just thought perhaps that that individual might be here to talk about Bighorn. So I guess if that person wants to speak, he or she could raise her hand, please.
Madam Director, just noting that sometimes technology is a little frustrating. I just chatted in the box to Disha Gila, and I have not received a response.
Beth, do you know if Bighorn was planning to send somebody?
I thought they were. The individual I've been talking to was Gary Friel. That is the individual that signed their application. So I was just gonna Google his name to see. came up as.
Yeah, Ms. Blackwell said that the individual she'd been talking about with, or talking to about Bighorn was Mr. Friel.
Mhm.
And that individual does not appear to be in the attendee list.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't see anybody here. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know if the entity is aware that they were not recommended for funding?
Mr. Chairman, yes, they are aware. I believe Ms. Blackwell has spoken with them, as has Mr. Miller, on the contract issue.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Board, it appears we're in a situation where we don't have a proponent wanting to address the board. We're aware of the technical challenges with this. There's no question that the Bighorn I'm trying to remember the name. Bighorn Enterprises serves a number of people, but it doesn't appear that they're eligible. So what is your pleasure? I'd certainly entertain a motion to support the director's recommendation. Madam Superintendent.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question. If we went forward and supported the director's recommendation to not fund this entity, I mean, our hands are kind of tied on this, but I also wish we had an opportunity to hear from the entity. Can we take this matter back up at another time if they do become an entity, or do we have to wait a full year for the next TEA meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to Beth. I know that we have in the past taken emergency TEA requests, but absent an emergency, I feel like we may have to wait for the next TEA meeting, but I would defer to Beth on that one.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Superintendent, I would agree with the director that historically last year was the first time that we've even considered emergency TEA applications, so that was the first. But they were truly emergency situations where a vehicle that they had depended heavily on had failed. I believe one of them even started on fire on the side of the road at one point. So those were the situations that we considered for an emergency. It wasn't just getting an extra vehicle to add to their fleet, which I believe this is an addition to their fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Well, I would certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the director's recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Is there a second? It's a second from the secretary, I believe. And if that is the case, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion to recommend the director's recommendation, it is unanimous. Madam Director, thank you, members of the board. Madam Director, do we have any more matters to come before us?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the applications that we received for consideration at today's TEA special SLIB meeting.
Well, thank you. Members of the board, are there any other comments? If there aren't, I'd certainly entertain a motion to adjourn. I do see the secretary has his hand raised. Mr. Secretary, I'll recognize you.
I just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note for the record that this is a T grant meeting, not a SLIB meeting. And so this isn't a record for short meeting for you. And with that, I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Treasurer. All in favor of the motion, please signify with a thumbs up. Thumbs up all across the board. Darn it.
I couldn't resist.
All right, thanks very much. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you all.